All right, we're going to start now. A very warm welcome to all of you out there to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us from so many different places. I am just imagining. It's really, really great to have you here. We are live from Milan. My name is Sushil, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's session with Vicky, which means that I'll be supporting the conversation as well as your questions towards the later part of our webinar. Now, before we start our webinar, I'd like to remind you that you will be getting a certificate of attendance in the next few days, as well as a handout in the form of today's presentation and a recording as well. Let me not forget that. But follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information on all that we're doing at ELI Publishing. You'll get tons and tons of interesting information, especially for teachers like you. Right, today we're excited to explore a topic that matters really deeply in classrooms and learning spaces everywhere. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Vicky Bagheri. Vicky, well, I think I mispronounced your surname, Vicky Bagheri. I'm so sorry about that. So Vicky is an experienced teacher trainer. She's also a material writer and a trainer for online IELTS. Fantastic. She's been working in ELT for 20 years now, predominantly in Europe, in the Middle East, as well as in Asia. And she brings a strong blend of real teaching insight, fresh ideas that truly connect with all of your language learners, as well as teachers like you and me. So Vicky actually regularly delivers education workshops and talks on a global aspect as well. I'd like all of you to please join me in welcoming Vicky as we begin. Over to you, Vicky.
Thanks. Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I hope you are well, and thank you very much for joining us today. It's my pleasure to be here with you. Today's session is not going to be a tradition, sit back and listen type of presentation. Instead, I love this to be more interactive and genuinely useful for your own context. So please do jump in the chat, as share your thoughts and also participate in little bit reflections that we are going to have and activities as we go along. So, when we talk about understanding learners, we often jump straight to the things like needs analysis or placement tests. But in today's classroom, especially in online and increasingly diverse contexts, learner understanding goes far beyond that. And that's why I've chosen 7 key perspectives that really shapes how our learners show up, learn, and thrive. And we will explore for each one, we'll explore them all together. And for each perspective, I will give you a bit of background to set the scene and a practical classroom strategies, and of course, a quick moment for you to reflect. So feel free to contribute in the chat at any time. Let's begin with a simple but powerful idea. Identity isn't something fixed or singular. Our learners don't step into the classroom as a blank slate. They arrive with multi-identities shaped by their families, cultures, communities, and even imagined futures. And all of these influence how they participate and how, of course, they learn. Translanguaging is part of this. Rather than treating languages as separated boxes, first language versus second language, it recognizes that learners draw on their full linguistic repertoire to make meanings. When we allow that, we are not only helping them to communicate more effectively, but also affirming who they are. And of course, how much freedom learners have to do this, it depends on school policies, teachers' beliefs, and even assessment system. But at its heart, translanguaging isn't simple or simply a language to support strategies, but it is an issue of fairness, of voice. And it's basically saying your whole linguistic identity is welcomed here. So before we move on, I would like to hear from you. When you think about your own learners, whether you are teaching online or face-to-face or a mix, how do their identities actually appear in the classroom? This could be through languages they use, their cultural references, their humor, the examples they choose in the discussions, or even the way they respond to the group work. Please pop a few thoughts in the chat. What signs do you notice that shows who your learners are beyond just be students of English? I'll give you a couple of seconds for everyone to pop their answers, and then we'll move on. Any idea?
I'd just like to say, if you've got any questions or any opinions, write it down in the questions section that you will see right above, not in the chat box, because this way it comes directly to me, and then I can share them with Vicky, of course. So the question, okay, right?
Okay. So I'm just gonna move on, considering the timing. So, what does all of this actually look like in practice? Here are very simple, low-prep activities that work well both in physical classrooms and online. And just a quick note of timing. I won't go through every activity in detail today. Otherwise, we'll simply want to go through everything. And I will just highlight the key points as we go. The full set is there on the slides, and if you wish, once you receive the PDF, and if you wish to reach out for a bit deeper walk through the activities, just drop me an email and I would be happy to answer. So these are basically brilliant when the learners create a visual maps to showing how and where they use different languages in their lives, when they are online, when they're with the friends, in school with the English teacher, and that shows immediately the multilingual identity of the student. It becomes more visible, and also it's much easier to discuss with them when it comes to comparing their identities when it comes to speaking English in a different setting. So to give you a quick case study of one of my own online classes, I was teaching a B2 level Chinese learner who often struggled with abstract emotional vocabulary. Words like overwhelmed, relieved, anxious. You could see she understood the ideas, but when it came to expressing them in English, she would hesitate or go completely silent, or sometimes she would quietly say the Mandarin word to herself before attempting in English. So rather than discouraging that, I encouraged her to lean into it. I asked her to explain the feeling in Mandarin first, and then try it in English afterwards. Once she clarified the concept for herself, her English output became noticeably more confident. And to build on that, I invited the rest of the group to share similar words in their own languages, and this opened up a really nice discussion in the class to show how different cultures express emotions differently, where meanings overlap and where they diverge, you know, and which concepts simply don't translate neatly. So the shift in the class was immediate. The learner who had been hesitant become visibly more engaged, and the rest of the class began to see their first language not as something to hide, but also a resource that enriched learning. So the whole class gained a richer understanding of emotional vocabulary through cross-linguistic awareness. Let's look at a few brief classroom scenarios to see how identity and translanguaging play out in the real setting. While you are reading the scenarios, all across the three scenarios, what we really see are learners drawing on their linguistic and the cultural identities to make sense of English. Whether it's the Syrian student who seeking comfort and belonging through Arabic, a Chinese professional using Mandarin terms to stay accurate in the technical discussions, or multilingual adults switching languages to generate a richer storytelling. Translanguaging helps them think, express ideas, and participate more confidently. The key point is that home languages aren't a barrier. They are a resource. When used purposefully and with the guidance, translanguages reduces anxious engagement and leads to a deeper understanding, actually. And even if it is something require us to balance with it emotional expectation or the classroom needs, basically. So how does this connect to the coursebook itself? I use English Goals and the coursebook from ELI Publishing to showcase these perspectives, and I use Unit 1 if you already have the book. When we look at the unit, you will notice it lends itself really well identifying focus work. So the opening pages draw on adjectives and personal qualities, which naturally encourage learners to describe people they genuinely know, and that immediately anchor the language in their own lives, cultures, and relationships. You can also, as you see, there is another activity here, describe 3 people you know well, which invites them to draw on their own home, culture, and personal identities. So even though the book doesn't explicitly label these activities as translanguaging or identity work, the structure is already there to support it. You can easily build in space for the learners to bring their first language and their experiences and the cultural references that this matter to them. So let's have a look at the second perspective. These terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but there is a subtle difference. Autonomy is basically the ability to take charge of one's own learning, the skills, and the strategies learners need to study independently. And agency, on the other hand, is the action, the choices learners make, the goals they set, and the responsibility that they take for shaping the learning journey. And there is sometimes a misconception of autonomy means learners working completely independently. But in the reality, autonomy is scaffolded. It develops gradually, and usually with a fair amount of teacher support. So it is less about leaving learners to get on with it and more about empowering them to make meaningful choices, and with supporting the framework, of course. And as you're all aware, recently, and especially in 2025, autonomy increasingly includes digital self-direction. using AI tools, apps, online platforms, and the corpora to guide their own development outside the classroom. And our role also has shifted from being the main sources in the class or the main source of the knowledge to being facilitator and navigator. And if you think why this is matter, well, when learners are passive, they often wait for us to provide everything. They might memorize what we teach, but doesn't always transfer into a real world use. And agency changes that. It closely linked to the motivation, self-determination, and also a long-term retention. So what does the learner agency actually look in the classroom? Here are a few strategies that it's easy to implement and to make a real difference in the classes. So as I said, I'm not going to go through them, but if you need more explanation how to apply them in the classes, I would happily drop you an email. So then there are some questions that we always, I think as teachers, we need to ask ourselves whenever we go to the classes or whenever we have a new group coming, if it's the languages schools and we're working with a different group of nationality. So I'm not going to ask this question from you, but I want you to think about it. And throughout today's session, I have more questions to pop on the slide. How much agency do you think you're currently using in your classes, in your context? Where does basically goes well and where does backfire? And of course, with all, we all work within a certain constraints with the curricula, exams, parental expectations, and institutional policy. So how do you strike a balance between giving learner meaningful choices and also meeting the requirement you're expected to follow? So how does the autonomy can support when it comes to the course books and practice within a class? So there are in English Goes, there are several places in the course book where naturally encourage choices and ownership. You've got the self-evaluation box at the end of the revision unit, which gives the learners the space to think about their own progress rather than relying solely on teacher judgment, you know. The vocabulary and the speaking activities also there to support. But from this unit, I found the writing part very interesting because it's asking to write a blog about someone they admire. So that gives learners freedom to select the topic, the examples they want to mention, the directions of the writing, and it's a lovely balance between the structure and the personal choices. And in the speaking task also, as I mentioned, learner has a choice to choose which facts to highlight, which details to emphasize, and how to present their idea. And that kind of, let's say, macro decision making is exactly what fosters agency. And also, although the book doesn't explicitly label it autonomy focus again, there is the opportunity for learning to choose and born there throughout the course with you. So let's have a look at the next perspective. So this area is increasingly important across education, not only in ELT. Neurodiversity recognizes that there is no single typical way of learning or processing the information. Not all brains work in the same way. Learners with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other profiles aren't problems to solve. Simply, they experience the world in a differently. And those differences often comes with real strength, like creativity, pattern recognition, problem solving, and even attention to details. When we talk about inclusion, we are moving beyond simply making accommodation so that learners can fit in. It is about designing learning environment that work for everyone from the outset, which is exactly what Universal Design for Learning encouraged us to do. And it is ultimately most, I can say, most barriers that neurodiverse learners face aren't about the ability that they have. It's more about the environment, the expectations that they haven't been designed within them in mind. And so what does the inclusion actually look like inside the language classroom? Here again, a few strategies to support the neurodiverse learners. And in reality, it benefits for all learners actually. If you look at the multi-modes, so rather than relying heavily on the text, giving students paragraphs and writing and readings to do, we can give them more visualized context, more orally, so they are more entry points for the learning, the better, basically. Or with chunking, it's another way to break down the tasks to manageable steps. So with the clear timelines that help reduce the cognitive load and also makes activity feel more achievable for students. And when we have learner choice in how they express understanding, whether that's through the writing, speaking, through drawing, or creating a mind map, using a digital tools, the flexible output gives learners control and plays to their strength as well. And then, of course, there are again questions to ask to see what barriers do neurodiverse learners encounter in your setting? Is there any? This might be, which I believe there's always something, which might be the academic side, the emotional, the sensory, or even the administrative, you know. Which inclusive practices have you already tried, or have you tried? And did it work well, or what didn't quite land, you know? And also how we move away from twisted mindset, trying to fix the problems and towards the strengths-based approach that values different ways of learning. And if we were to apply a more universal design mindset in the classroom, what would it look like? Because we don't want to exaggerate on the concept. And of course, when we look at the unit, you can see again, it's already incorporates several elements of universal design for learning, and even though it's not labeled. So, for example, the layout is very clear and visually structured. Color-coded sections and the consistent formatting really help learners who benefit from visual organizations. The grammar section on the top is a good example of step-by-step scaffolding, tables, examples, and the control practice that lead the learner gradually towards more independent use, reducing cognitive overload. And the reading text is broken into shortened paragraphs with clean typography, which supports processing for learners who struggle with dense block of text. So you also get a clear progression from controlled to guided throughout the unit, which is ideal for learners who need predictability or structured pathways. And of course, the listening part makes it great for clear set, the visual predictions, activities, and it's very supportive when a student can benefit from the multimodal cues in the coursework. So I'm just going to move to another one. So what is learning analytics? So learning analytics essentially using the digital data generated by learners to understand their progress and their behavior more deeply. So this goes well beyond the test scores, to be honest. When we look at patterns such as the time they spent, the engagement levels, the quizzes they took, or pathways through the online materials. And if we use this responsibly, this helps us personalize learning, intervene early when someone is struggling, and make evidence-based or evidence-informed decisions. But of course, there are risks too. Data overload can make interpretation difficult. Poorly managed analytic can reduce learners to numbers or feel intrusive. So the key trend here is now to moving from surveillance towards the empowerment. So making the data something that learners themselves can benefit from, and they can learn how to own their own learning progress. So a sense of ownership over their learning journey, basically. And this is how learning analytics can help in the classroom, and what activities that we can apply in the classes to reflect basically the numbers that are not numbers in isolations, but they are actually student voices. This is how they practice and what they need to do, and where we can benefit from these statistics. Of course, we need to be transparent as well, because learners deserve to know what data we are collecting and why we are collecting it and what's the purpose. So it's always great to let them know about that. And of course, again, I'll start thinking, what kind of data do I currently use in my classes, whether informally or through digital tools? Where has the data genuinely help me to make a decision? Where it is felt very limited, or is it intrusive? And how we can involve the learners in interpreting their own data, rather than keeping them in a locked behind the teacher dashboard, basically. And there's also ethical layer as well. What boundaries do we need to maintain to ensure the data supports the learner rather than controlling it? Because we don't want to do that. The more you control the learners, the disengaged they become during the course. So here is a quick scenario. Imagine your platform that you're using says, one of your learners spend only 2, for example, minutes on each reading task. What do you do with this information? Do you assume they are rushing, they're struggling, they're lazy, or their data genuinely correct, they are fast, or as you know, data never tell the whole story. So the key point is how we interpret the data. And that's where our professional judgment basically become crucial, and what we need to do when it comes to the data that we've received, how we are going to apply it in the classes, and moving forward, helping the student to progress. and of course to improve during the course. And looking again at the coursebook, so the digital component that ELI Publishing has is fantastic. It's paired well with the learning analytic. So there is basically a dashboard for you that ELI linked environment tracking the grammar, performance, listening results, vocabulary tasks, and also the video progress. So students get instant feedback, and the teachers can see which activities were completed, how well learners basically, or how well they perform basically, sorry, and that's give us kind of a rich picture of engagement. Are they engaged? Do they like the platform? Do they like the coursebook? And what constructive, supportive way I can use throughout the course. So, global Englishes. This is honestly a very interesting topic for myself, because today English isn't a single fixed standard, but a global, plural language used for more by non-native speakers than the native speakers. So this means our goal as teacher isn't to make the learners sound a particular native speaker model, but to help them become clear, adaptable, and intelligible in a wide range of international settings. So global Englishes basically challenges the old native speaker model and ask harder questions. Whose English counts? Which norm do we follow? And ultimately, who gets to decide? And in terms of the classroom practices, so how does this translate? Basically, one simple shift is diversifying the listening input, exposing learners to a range of accents from around the world, not just only British or American. We can, for example, prioritize the intelligibility over imitation, or focusing on clarity with communication strategies such as paraphrasing or repair. And also when it comes to role play, instead of bringing American and push a student to have American and British accent, we can do a role play in a real life. Imagine a meeting between a Japanese colleague and the Brazilian colleague communicating in English. So these scenarios reflected global communication and finally help the student to reflect on their own English without putting any pressure on them. And of course, I would always question, how much exposure do our learners get to different Englishes? So we have to always have a look at our material. What kind of model do we use? Native models do we use, or are we including, sorry, all Englishes? And what does the successful English actually mean here in a teaching context? And how we can prepare the learners for the global communications without, of course, overwhelming them. And the book is a great example. So the right course book bring a right material. So here the text focusing on a foreign student or a foreign celebrity, and the foreground of international story told through a global language, which is English. It's help the student to understand the concept better. And of course, the focus on the youth culture here, the contemporary issues and the inspirational stories naturally encourages the intercultural awareness and the real world communication as well. And then how about the social emotional learning? So social emotional learning isn't just a buzzword. It's about helping the learner develop self-awareness, social skills, and an ability to manage emotions and also relationships. So in ELT, emotions play a huge role. You know, speaking in a new language require confidence, vulnerability, and resilience. And anxiety, fear of judgment, and belonging all influences how much learners participate. So research consistently shows that strong social-emotional learning leads to a strong academic performance, a greater motivations, a better long-term outcomes, and just importantly, our social-emotional competence as a teacher shapes the classroom climate as well. And there are lots of simple ways to integrate social-emotional learning into our lessons. We can start with quick emotional check-ins, a simple, how are you feeling today? You know, give us a sense of the room. Mindful pauses, a shorter strand or breathing moments, you know, to help them to reset the class between the tasks. Collaborative projects that build teamwork and empathy, and also the role play helps the learners practicing situations from a different perspectives. The strength spotting activities is where the learners highlight something positive as a peer contribution can transform a group dynamics, you know, and the reflective journals, it's a great way to link emotions in learning experiences, building self-awareness over time. And how do emotions appear in your classroom? Is it very openly or no, it's under the surface, you know? Which social emotional learning practices feel more natural to apply in our context? Because we have so many ways to apply it, but we don't want to make it feel forced. So, and how do we model social emotional skills as a teachers? And because social emotional learning isn't only beneficial for learners, it can make a significant difference to teacher well-being too. And so these are screenshots from the coursebook by the different parts, and I just wanted to put them together to show you there are plenty of opportunities for social emotional development throughout the coursebook. The vocabulary work includes emotional descriptors like brave, kind, confident, generous, and naturally leads itself to discussing the values. And learners read inspiring stories throughout the coursebook, which is reflect on how certain figures are admirable or perfect for developing empathy. And all together, basically the units encourage emotional expression, positive interactions, and that's exactly the fundamentary or the foundation of social emotional learning prompts. And finally, AI supported learner profile. So as we all know, AI now can generate dynamic snapshots of learners' strengths, needs, performances, and progress based on the patterns in their work. And these profiles can help personalize learning pathways and give timely feedback, you know, but there are always risks too. So with over-reliance and concern around the data privacy. So there's always a concern. And this is why our role as a teacher becomes even more important. We don't simply accept AI insight at a face value, but we interpretate it, we question it, we contextualize it with our professional judgment. And how we can apply these in the classrooms. So here are some balanced and thoughtful way that we can use in the classes when it comes to AI. And I'm sure everyone using the different platforms and different basically the resources and to apply in the classes and to make the classes more interactive. And adaptive practice is another option that we can use AI that can adjust the task difficulties automatically to respond to performances. So if we have a platform that we can adjust according to CFR level, so for example, in the class with mixed level students, I can easily adjust the level of the passage, for example, or the questions. If it's the writing, the level of the questions for the students. So none of the students will struggle in the class. The slow learner will understand the questions perfectly and would be able to apply in its own language, in its own vocabulary, and also the bit quicker ones and with a better level, so they can do their work without being bored in the class, waiting for the other group of students to complete the tasks. So in terms of the resources again and the course book, so the book has got digital tools that contributes to AI support profiles, but so there's a platform that tracks grammar, scores, listening comprehensions, pronunciation attempts, and also lots of videos for the progress. But which also it allows to generate a personalized suggestions, while learners can review the errors and practices autonomously. We can personalize the lesson for them. And one important thing that I need to mention here is the course book English Goals doesn't rely on AI alone. It integrates human teaching with digital data, which keeps the balance just right, you know. And final questions is, how do we feel about AI creating the learner profile for us in our context? What is the benefit of having this type of technology in the classes? Where are we concerned about it? How we can protect it, basically? How this protection is going to label our students? Are we, or does it box in by automated feedback? You know, you don't want to have this type of pressures in the classes. And of course, how we can make sure learners remain the owners of their own data. Let's test this to show you how the idea works. So imagine an AI profile. Tell us that the learner is weak in reading but strong in a grammar, right? So what do you do with that? Do you mind to pop your answer in the question in the chat for me, please? What do you do? The AI profile tell me the learner is weak in reading but is strong in a grammar. What do you do? Do you simply, for example, take it at a face value, or do you check it with your observation, with the learner self-assessments? Do you chat with the student about it to see where the challenges come from? Or will you replace the technically, some people would say we will replace the whole paragraph or whole reading and give them a new reading that the student can resonate in terms of the level and the CFR if you wanted to challenge them. So what would you do if you are in this context? And I can, or Sushil, if you can tell me.
I can absolutely do that. So I actually have a lot of interaction here, Vicky. I mean, lots and lots of questions. And I have told some of the participants that towards the later part of today's session, you will be addressing some of those questions. But in answer, some of the answers to your current question now is, I'll read it out for you. Wakar has said scaffolding. He has said scaffolding. And Saeed has said you can conduct another test. Basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely. Yes, the scaffolding, so step by step to see how we can figure out the difference, because obviously this is a reading, and we normally say to students, the more you read, the easier you learn English, or it helps you with your vocabulary. But of course, it would help them with the grammar as well. But so. Naturally, we believe if the student read more, they would understand the grammar concept as well. But sometimes it doesn't work, so then we have to scaffold it. Or, as you said in the chat, we have to apply another test. You know, we use another test to reassess and then get a better feedback. And of course, personalize the lesson, tailor it to the student need. And
I've got a question here from Aya. He's asking, what tool can I use to make that analysis? This is a question from Aya. What tool?
So there are so many tools available, but something that we can rely on as a teachers, and when we know the data of the students are, you know, the data privacy is there, GDPR and everything else, I would always say rely on the coursebook material, because, for example, with English goals, as I said, there is I'm just going to go back to that slide. There is a digital book for it, which allow you to interact and understand and track the students in terms of their performances and double check how they do in the courses. And of course, because this is a resource for us, it would come with a similar readings and the paragraphs that we can apply in the classes differently. But if you would like to use something differently other than the coursebook, it should be, because normally people would say, oh, we use ChatGPT. I'm 100% against the chat. Because it's not accurate, you never get the data. Whatever information you give to the chat, that will give you that information back. However tone you say that ever tone you would receive the information. So we cannot rely on the chat GPT or something similar to that. But I would specifically and personally rely on the coursebook material and the platform that they provide, rather than seeking for some platforms that I'm not sure would it be accurate or even the data is secured. But I can always have a look and then drop me an email. I can send you some links as well to the reliant one that you can trust. So we looked at 7 different perspectives here to understanding learners and learner identity and all the translanguaging, autonomy, and the other perspectives. Each of these perspectives highlights a different side of what it means to understand and to understand our learners, and some focuses on identity and cultures. So others on motivations and well-being, and other on opportunity and challenges of the technology. But the common thread is this: effective teaching isn't just about the content. It's about people. It's about seeing our learners in their all their diversity. and adapting our practices in a way that they feel recognized, they feel supported, and prepared for the world with the real English. You know, so maybe this is a very common phrase that we always hear from the students, or when they're switching from one course to another, one teacher to another, that they all learned standard English. When it comes to the real world, when they travel, when they come to UK, they go to English-speaking countries, they felt that they have learned nothing, basically, because not to the obviously to the word, but you get an idea. When they feel it's very different, this is not the real English, this is not what I learned during the course, for example. So to understand the students and to provide that support for them and prepare them for the world use of English is very important. And of course, if we ignore these perspectives, we risk exclusion, disengagement, and also the mismatch between the classroom and the real world. But if we embrace them critically, creatively, and also creatively with empathy, we can have all inclusive, motivated students and more effective way of teaching and also learning for students. So in short, we prepare learners not to just pass the test, but to thrive as confident, confident users of English in today's global, diverse and digital world that we have. So here are the references that I've used for this presentation today, and this is my contact details if you would like to reach out, and if you have any questions that we will not be able to answer today, I will be delighted to help later. Thank you very much, Sushi. If there's any question, yes, I will be able to answer.
I have to say, Vicky, this was excellent. It was really interesting, especially for me to see how you've created this presentation and all of the material. It's content rich. I really enjoyed your webinar, I have to say. We do have a lot of questions right from the very beginning, and I've been preempting everyone. I must apologize. I've informed you that all of your questions will be addressed towards the end of the session, and we have come to the end of the session. Can I read out some of the questions, Vicky? So see that I haven't neglected our participants. So I'm going to say that I'm going to read out the first question from Elizabeth. Now, her question is, how can we teachers balance supporting students' emotional needs with teaching language skills in a language classroom? Did you get that question? Would you like me to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I kind of explained it during the slide, but we have so many different types of students in the classes, and we sometimes not questioning about their backgrounds and understanding where they come from, not particularly about the country they come from, about the cultures, the family, and understanding their background, and also the purposes, what they are going to use this English for in the future. Because the more we understand the students, the easier it gets to connect with them, to build a relationship. And I always believe in the relationships. Once the students feel safe and confident in your classes, it's much easier to communicate and also to learn and understand the English better. But knowing about their backgrounds and learn more about the students, or even about their ability or sometimes disability, it helps a lot to teach them, to have them in a class and connect them and emotionally support them, or sometimes not addressing the issues directly in front of everyone in the class. So have them private and maybe in a chat or somewhere, private chat, that would always help. I hope I managed to answer the question.
Absolutely, that was a brilliant response, really. I've got another question from Saeed. Now, Saeed actually has two questions. I'm going to pick one. He asks, should we encourage them openly to express their identities in class, or should the environment remain neutral to ensure equality? Am I right? Yes. Yes, that's the question. It's a bit loaded, isn't it?
I mean, I would say, I would not be able to say definitely do this, definitely do that, because every class is different. Every person is different to another one. So it depends into the environment, to the class. If you think like, yes, if they are going to address it separately and individually, that would help with your class and the progress of the students and the way they are going to learn, why not go for it? But if you think, no, it would not help me, but actually it's going to create a barrier between the English courses and the students themselves, so I would obviously not suggest to do that. So I always observe the concept and the context and also the students and the environment, and then make a move, basically, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think we've got time for 2 more questions, very quick ones. Now, both of these questions are actually connected to each other. So Saira has asked, how can we shift our mindset from simply accommodating neurodiverse learners to actively celebrating their unique strengths? So how do we accommodate neurodiverse learners to actively celebrate their unique strengths?
So one easy way, without directly address it, would be our material, the course material that we are providing for them. Yes, we sometimes have to follow by the book and see what exactly is there to use and to apply. But as I said, not everybody learned in the same way. Not all brain works the same way. So if I personalize my material and make sure the student, for example, with I don't know, ADHD, dyslexia in the class would benefit more from this type of material, I would dedicate time to create completely different type of material with the same subject, with the same context. It's still going to learn the same grammar as the rest of the class is going to learn, but a bit more, not simpler, more easy for that student with that particular disability, or I don't want to call it disability, it's just like
learning
challenges, yes, exactly, thank you. The challenges they have, so they would enjoy the class, they're still confident, they don't feel isolated, or they don't feel to point out that I am different. So I would always look at my material and then the way how I conduct the lesson, and do I differentiate them? Do I make it clear in the class that there is a difference? So I think it's always the point is us as the teachers rather than the classmate and what's going on in the class, basically, and mainly the course material.
Brilliant, absolutely. Yeah. One last question.
Please.
Are you ready? Okay. Yeah. This is from Pollyanna. Now, Pollyanna is asking, what group size would you say is the most accommodating for neurodivergent students? So what she says is, I'm noticing the bigger the class is, the less comfortable my students feel and they do retreat.
Yes, but what kind of class is that? Is it the physical class or is it the online classes? Because in online setting, for any class, we normally say maximum 6 students, maximum 8 students, you would have a perfect setting. You would be able to dedicate time equally to all the students. And if you have students with neurodiversity or neurodiverse learners, so yes, that's 6 or 8 would be the best setting for them to be in and to learn. But if it's the physical classes, unfortunately, we cannot control it because then administrative are involved, the courses and the school, languages school, and you don't want to deal with the principals. But I would say in that kind of situation when we have like 20 students in class or even more, when you divide them to the different groups, don't always divide the same student with the neurodiverse challenges in the same group of friends. So you move this student throughout the class so that the student get more confidence being with every other group rather than just being very comfortable with 3 of them or 4 of them. So moving the neurodiverse learner around the class, that would help them to have more confidence, because that would make them feel more welcome by everybody in the class rather than just my group that we always do the writing together. So that's what we do. Or regarding to the skills, if you see their struggle with the writing, with giving them just the task and how we normally conduct the writing classes. So I will change it to more visualize context. So give them picture, for example, use a picture dictionary in classes rather than giving them a paragraph to write. So I would ask them to describe. So kind of not 100% of the time, I'm not saying no writing for them, but I would make sure during the class, if they are not able to write and perform as quick as the other, or as, you know, absolutely well as that, so I can transfer it to basically speaking tests where they can contribute differently, and I would praise that. You know, it depends to the context and the number of the students. Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. That is absolutely true. Now, I hope all of the questions out there have been answered. This is all the time we have today. Good things must come to an end. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in this webinar, and thank you especially to Vicky for an insightful session. I really enjoyed it, and for sharing your expertise with us today. You know, this has been great. This has been really interactive at the end. It has been a pleasure moderating this whole session for you. Now, we hope you leave with ideas that you can apply in your classrooms and in your learning spaces. Have a great rest of the day, everyone, wherever you are in this world, and we look forward to welcoming you again soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.